welcome to the April 2020 learning lesson. This learning lesson is on how to capture lessons learned without wasting the stakeholders' time. So let me tell you the story and then let me show you what I did. So the story is I'm working on a really complex contract supporting the customer's team with an incumbent supplier, and we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, and we're going to go out to bid. The incumbent may not get the next 10 years worth of work. So I'm talking to the man that I'm reporting to, and I'm reading the contract, and there are 26 contract change orders, and I'm confused about why my customer, my client, decided to take back work. They de-scoped work in several iterations so that by the end it was a fairly significant chunk of work. So I asked the man that I'm reporting to, could I please talk to the executive who made these changes, authorize them within the corporation as opposed to within the contract? So as all really busy executives do, the man that I report to wrote a really quick 2-line email. Hey, Rich, Jeanette is working on the blah, blah, blah contract. She'd like a few minutes of your time to talk about it, period. So Rich shoots back and says, why would I give you my time? What are you wanting to talk to me about? So that message gets routed back to me externally, and the man that I'm reporting to says, well, you wanted this meeting. What are you going to talk about? And in come the contract professional, Playbook, tools, dun, 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 imagine a knight on a horse coming and riding in. Literally, I was so frustrated that that email went out without any thought. And two, that I had been rebuffed because naturally I'm really important. And so you want to talk to me when you're going to prepare to negotiate a contract. So what I did instead is I pulled out the Contract Professional Playbook lessons learned, and I took 5 generic questions and I made them tailored, customized to the questions that I needed answered. I sent that back to the executive, copied the man that I'm reporting to, and not only did I get a very long email response detailed as to each and every question, but he became very involved in a very appropriate way, providing a lot of technical advice and guidance all along the development and negotiation. So I want to encourage you to start thinking about how you can have tools that you can pull out of your file folder and use so you don't waste or perceive to waste the stakeholders' time.
Let's look at the lessons learned tool, the checklist from the Contract Professionals Playbook. Here are the questions from the tool. The image of the tool is to the right. So the first question is the common issues list, work performed without a formal contract authorization. So with this particular client, the contract authorization was critical, and by looking at all the contract change orders, I had become suspicious that work might have been performed without a formal contract authorization. So I pulled that question and then tailored it. From the services list, did the customer exercise any options for lack of supplier performance, such as cure notice or corrective action plan? Now with this one, this is really important because I find that a lot of people gripe and complain, but they don't actually do anything. So there's a difference between griping and complaining about performance and actually going through the steps of formally sending a cure notice or creating a corrective action plan. Also from the service list, which measurements, actions, meetings, conversations helped avoid performance issues, and what actions or which actions, measures, or meetings should have been included? It's actually that sub-bullet that hindsight has been incredibly useful in getting the contract rewritten in an appropriate way for both supplier and customer interactions. And then finally, were all the tests or inspections done on time by the correct party? Because tests and inspections had been done by each party in the contract. So these are from the tool for the image to the right. Now, these are the tailored questions that I designed in response to the executive's email. Hey, what are we going to talk about? Was any work performed without a formal contract authorization, and what were the circumstances? Did customer, I use the name of the company, so did XYZ or customer exercise any options for lack of supplier performance? What was the result? And do we need to change any terms or corrective action planning for any future work, giving more customer oversight of rework and different notice terms, etc.? That was a big issue. And so that's where I started to tailor specifically to the issue at hand why I needed this particular stakeholder involved. Were there any quarterly or annual meetings that were critical for success? See how I started to tailor the question. Do we need to make these meetings mandatory to ensure that key personnel is present? Sourcing, the team that I was supporting is concerned about staffing levels, training, and qualified personnel for these services. We actually did include more key personnel, and we've actually included a bonus for the retention of key personnel annually. So if you finish out a year, you do get a bonus for that year. If you don't finish the year, you don't get the bonus. But if you can complete a full calendar year, you get a bonus. And I think that that's going to be a really important driving factor for performance for key personnel going forward in this relationship. Were there any issues with tests or inspections, etc.? Did a defect not get caught soon enough? This was a really debated point within the contract rewrite. And so we really stepped up the verbiage around startup testing, commissioning, because there were both fabricated machinery items that had to be tested and commissioned, and then the services using those fabricated items. So this was a really important question because this got a lot of conversation, brought in a lot of other stakeholders that we would not have normally had contact with or a commitment from to participate. So it was really good. And then finally, were there any disputes, even some informal disputes? No, there weren't. It was really interesting. Despite the number of contract change orders, there were no formal disputes or even something that would be considered an informal dispute. They were able to use the negotiation process, negotiate in good faith, and change the contract. So it was a very interesting learning experience. And that last bullet about disputes is something that I threw in at the last minute, wanting to make sure that I hadn't missed something, being on the outside, that perhaps there had been a formal dispute or possibly even litigation that maybe had been settled. So these questions, again, it took me 5 minutes to pull up the tool, modify and tailor the questions to the specific request of the executive. And not only did I get that long email explanation, but I got that executive's continued commitment to support our efforts to renegotiate and redraft the agreement with the incumbent. So I can't tell you enough how important having something at the tip of your fingers really is. The June 2020 learning lesson, contract modifications in a time of crisis. Force majeure is just the beginning. So we'll talk about modifying the contract modification checklist and using that checklist in a time of crisis. So I hope I see you then.